Hello and welcome to another installment of the Full Force Monthly, brought to you by Hoardar, the collector's app. I am Christopher McLeod AKA Diagnostic 80, and in this regular series we get stuck into specific G.I. Joe related topics with different special guest hosts every single month. So who's joining me on this episode then? Well, the same people that we had last time. First up, we have one half of the Articulated Points YouTube channel and my regular co-host on the Full Force Weekly. It's Patrick Notpicard Stewart, and guess who's back again for the third time in a row? Yes, it's the General himself, Justin Generals Joe's Bell. Okay then, with PulseCon behind us now, we thought we would look at some of our most wanted G.I. Joe Classified Deluxe figures. We've already looked at Cobra, so now it's time for the Joes. Throw in another version therapy and you've got yourself a brand new episode of... What is it, Pat?
It's the Full Force Monthly.
Yes, we are back, guys, for the second part of our Classified Deluxe chat. How's everyone doing? How are you, Pat, buddy?
Doing okay, as always. I'm more curious how Justin's doing.
No one cares about Justin. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Pat and Chris. Yeah, no, doing well.
Awesome.
Whole life together. Are
you guys excited to talk more Joes?
Of course.
Always.
Oh, that didn't.
Always ready to talk G.I. Joe.
That felt forced. That full forced. But yeah, no, let's do it. We did Cobra last time. That was a lot of fun. I think it was Overkill. It was. I've completely forgotten our three. Pythona. And what was yours, Pat?
Hotwire.
Hotwire,
yeah.
Yes. How did I think? It was only like a few weeks ago. My brain is mush, I'm telling you now.
I'm glad one of us is prepared anyway.
Yeah, you've been doing your homework. I appreciate it. It's because Pat and I are seasoned now. We just like, whatever. We just turn up and say stuff.
You roll out of bed and put the earbuds in or whatever, and you're good to go.
We're just the talent.
That's actually probably accurate.
He actually didn't roll out of bed. Like, he's got a bed in that toy room. He's just kind of sitting on the mattress there.
Everything is done off his bed, isn't it? But yeah, that's personal. Okay, let's get stuck in then, guys, to Pat's bed. Right then, people, we are talking G.I. Joe Deluxe figures today, and specifically for Team G.I. Joe. Each presenter has chosen a character they would like to see as a deluxe figure. They've given them a backstory, they will describe how they expect them to be designed, highlight any cool features, and have even itemised their entire accessory loadout. Now, we are only talking figures that get more accessories in fancy boxes, like the first Snake Eyes, Snake Supreme Cobra Commander, Master of Disguise Zartan, Dr. Mindbender, etc. We are not talking figures with animal companions or vehicles, but expect those discussions in the future. Okay then, let's start with Justin's first choice. Justin, take it away, buddy.
So it was kind of interesting. I think before Pat and I sort of talked about the way that our previous Cobra sets are going to be kind of like two halves of a theme, I had kind of envisioned the Cobra set being a theme with the G.I. Joe set. So that's kind of how I built it, but it can work otherwise as well. But before I get into that too much, we do have a little backstory.
G.I. Joe has intercepted some key Cobra communications, leading them to believe that Overkill, the revolutionary commander of the Bats, has established a base of operations in a remote abandoned Cobra facility. Drone footage has identified a vast assortment of various robotic traps and barriers, so a full strike team is impossible. In fact, it might be up to just one soldier, a soldier who can strike silent and strike fast. Hit and Run does just as his name suggests, one of G.I. Joe's fastest sprinters. Dodging his way through the various minefields and booby traps is a task that perhaps only he can accomplish. Parachuting into the remote facility, Hit and Run will have to prep carefully and execute perfectly.
So yes, as you can see, I chose for my G.I. Joe side Hit and Run, which should come as no surprise to anybody who knows me somewhat well. He's been one of my favorite characters for a long time. I thought maybe this is a perfect opportunity to get him in figure form. And even in 1988, when he was first released, there was a little air of deluxe about him. He had that working duffel bag with the grappling hook, the knife, the machine gun. He was just a really, really great figure back then, and I think he's a character and a design that would benefit really well from the classified 6-inch treatment. Just from a design perspective, he's got a lot of layered gear on him. obviously with the Real American Hero format, it was sculpted on top of him, but I could see some really cool secondaries, so sort of the cross strap harness.
Oh yeah.
The straps on his legs. Yeah, the grenades, all that. I mean, it's the kind of, and plus, being a 1988 figure, the fans might not be quite so deeply married to his vintage looks, so maybe Hasbro could try, some new flair to kind of bring him up, a little bit more modern. As one of the world's biggest hit and run fans, I wouldn't mind if they souped up his web gear a little bit, but I could see him sort of based on that original 88 design, the green camouflage uniform. He's got to have camouflage skin. I mean, that's just that's part of the character. That's key. Yeah. And I think a nice thing where this is concerned is we've seen proven that, with Outback, they're not afraid to dip into the European Tiger Force exclusives, so they could always do that for hit and run as well.
Are you pandering? Yeah,
I'm totally pandering. Yeah, that's what I'm doing here. But there's also, they could do Night Force if they wanted to. Even though he didn't appear in the vintage as Night Force, he did in the 50th anniversary line, and sort of did also in the club exclusive stuff too. So there's all sorts of avenues that they could do some cool stuff. And even if they wanted to go to that special missions issue where he appeared in Arctic gear, they could do that too.
Gear, I mean, yes.
Yeah, there's all sorts of options for hit and run. And actually, I honestly believe that this character has a little bit more popularity and a little bit more legs than people might think he does. I think in the modern era, we're always a little bit surprised, I think, when we look through the years and see exactly how many hit and run figures they made in the modern era. I don't know exactly how many that is, but if you include the club and include the 50th anniversary and the 25th anniversary.
The club did the FSS one, didn't they? And then the Tiger Force one. There was the Wolf Squad one in the 50th.
Yep.
And is that it? I think that's it.
Well, there was the convention one too, the convention Night Force one that had the black shirt and the green pants. Yeah, that Night Force one.
5 hit and runs in a short period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't get to him until, they did the Cobra Island one, I think in 2009 or 10, something like that.
Yeah.
But then from there until like 2014 or 15, they did, like 4 different other versions of him. So I think he's a pretty popular character. I'd love to see like a removable helmet would be something they could do in a 6-inch scale that you couldn't really get in the Real American Hero. I mean, he did have a removable helmet in some of the modern figures, so I think that's something they could carry forward.
And goggles. Goggles
cool. Too. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing that I think would be really cool, since we're talking about a deluxe set, obviously you need to have some more souped up accessories. I'd love to see them do an homage to the Target exclusive hit and run, which actually came with a working parachute pack. So he could come with some really cool pack that the figure could wear with a parachute that actually worked.
Yeah.
You might kind of question, well, how can they do that on a 6-inch scale? Well, I'm going to talk about Sigma 6, so watch out. But they did a working parachute pack in Sigma 6. So if they can do it for Sigma 6, I don't see why they can't do it for G.I. Joe Classified. And I think that would be a really cool tie-in to that Target exclusive version, but also make the figure a little bit more deluxe. And of course, people are going to say, well, why should Hit and Run come with a parachute? What about Ripcord or Airborne or any of those characters? And why not? It could serve multiple purposes. Yeah, they could certainly use it for them too.
Who's to say Ripcord hasn't already come out in this universe of yours, and that Hit and Run is getting the parachute for the second time? Who's to say, right?
Exactly. But I could also see him coming with, obviously, his trademark duffel bag. Depending on how kind of deluxe they want it to go, they could make that duffel bag open and have all sorts of other gear inside. With the story of him kind of like parachuting onto the island on his own to strike back at Overkill, they could even include some camping gear or something like that. Depending on how deluxe you wanted to make it, and if they could somehow make a folding tent and the supports for the tent fit into his duffel bag. I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff they could do, make his rifle maybe customizable. Maybe it can come apart. Maybe it's got like scopes and silencers and all sorts of different things like that. I think there's a wealth of options that you can do for a character like Hit and Run that really leans into, sort of who he is. And of course, the duffel bag would have to have some kind of grappling hook and maybe a grappling hook launcher, the machete or the knife or whatever you want to call that bladed weapon he comes with would be another cool element. I think it's technically a knife, although a machete would be a very cool idea because, you know, he could potentially be traipsing through the jungle to go after overkill. So there's all sorts of options for a character like this when
the
you're talking about.
The knife on his bag, though, in the original one is like the size of a blooming broadsword.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's like half the size or 3/4 the size of his arm. So yeah, it may be a knife, but it's the biggest knife I've ever seen.
I think kind of having a knife on his person, like kind of like on a sheath, and then having the bag have the machete on the outside would be cool.
Yeah.
But they could do it like a proper closed machete sheath on the outside of the bag, so that it slid in, and it would be cool because it'd be like black handle, black bag. It would all kind of, you know, blend in nicely, and then you pull it out and you got the kind of blade, the silver blade or something. That'd be really cool.
That'd be fantastic. They could do like a little peg and post system like they do with so many of their backpacks, where you could like plug the sheath right into it and the machete into the sheath, and then
totally.
Yeah,
like, so you don't have to
have
so it doesn't have to be on the bag.
Yeah, you could even put it on his back maybe if you wanted to. Yeah, if you've got that post and hole kind of format. Yeah,
they might even better retool Recondo's machete a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, use that machete, but like maybe get a different sheath kind of structure for it. But yeah, that'd be wicked. Yep. Yeah, well up for that.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, Hit and Run, like I said, is one of my favorite characters in the mythology. I think. You know, balancing him off, you know, having his G.I. Joe mission be to infiltrate Overkill's headquarters, who was kind of the first set. You know, I kind of put that together before I knew Pat was going to go with Hotwire to make kind of that 2-part set. So, but it you know, it doesn't matter. The story is kind of the backdrop. I think the figure and the accessories that he comes with is really the important thing, and that's kind of how I would sell Hit and Run. And I know you like us to go through packaging. The package is kind of, it's a tough sell for me because I think obviously he's a wilderness sort of jungle looking guy. If we can kind of wrap that into what the packaging looks like, that would be cool. But you know, I'm not a graphic designer. I have trouble kind of visualizing that. I really like the idea of Overkill and Hotwire being two halves of that, you know, sort of similar theme, kind of like how they're doing Serpentor and Dr. Mindbender. So I don't really want to encroach on that a whole lot, but I think there's some potential for some cool like jungle elements, vines or something like that they could have on the Hit and Run box to kind of talk back to his jungle roots, so to speak.
I don't know if I'd like to lean more into his mountain climbing.
That's true too. Yeah, he's got that like
yeah.
working, you know, belts and the grappling hook. That would be very cool. Like maybe some rock formation, something or other. Even if that'd be pretty neat. It'd be nice if maybe you unfolded the box and maybe he was in that familiar kind of rock climbing pose inside.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's some cool potential there. You like unfold it and it's got sort of rock contours and textures on the interior packaging. Yeah, I like that idea. That's a pretty cool idea.
That would be dope. This is a great choice. Like hit and run. Like, I knew you were going to choose it, but it was either this or Hit and Run, Sigma 6 Hit and Run, which doesn't exist. But like, I think just in terms of the accessories, this thing just wins out. But then it's other stuff like on his person, like the secondary, like the straps.
Yeah,
that could be such a cool, integrated, fun little feature with like the rope climbing and everything, and you could again incorporate the bag and the rope and the grappling hook and, you know, and his secondary all in like, I don't know, some way. So like maybe it was like not carabiners obviously, because that would be impossible, but something where there's like a loop with a hole in it so the rope can tuck inside. It might cause breakage and stuff like that, but they'd have to work that out engineering wise.
Another cool thing might be it kind of infringes on the Tomax and Zaymot a little bit. Maybe something on his back that kind of hooks to a zip line or something that he could go up and down. Use the grappling hook for a zip line. I mean, that'd be kind of neat.
And like, because again, incorporating fun features like that would be amazing. Yeah, I love the thought of this one, and I love the idea as well of the repaint aspect and getting Tiger Force Hit and Run out there. But then I can see it happening. Like they could minimize the gear he comes with, you know, and just have the rifle, the backpack, and you know that would probably be all right for a Tiger Force.
Yeah,
Hit and
I
Run
would think
repaint.
so. Yeah, I mean, if it's, you know, a Target exclusive for $24 or whatever, and I mean, if it's a Target exclusive, they don't actually have to produce it. Just take pictures of it and just never ship it to anybody. I mean, it's going to be the same as what we're dealing with Outback anyway. So,
enjoy your pre-order collections. Pat, what do you think of Hit and Run?
I think it's a great idea. I think that if it's a Target exclusive, you could almost embrace the fact that he was previously a Target exclusive with a parachute and maybe return to retro cards for the pack.
Ooh.
I think that the appeal of Hit and Run has always kind of been there. It's interesting that, you know, he's not the only G.I. Joe figure that comes with mountain climbing equipment. Obviously, there's Rock, Viper, and Alpine. But the function of his was always a little more fun. The fact that it was easy to wind up into that duffel bag, and it felt like he had things hidden in that sense. And then he had the cool face camo and arm camo, really. Just kind of set him apart. It's interesting to me that, you know, a lot of people complain about 1982 being just green figures. And then when it comes to Hit and Run, everybody gets really excited.
Yeah.
But I think that those elements and then that splash of just red color on his helmet really set this figure off and made him different than his surroundings at the time on the shelves. And it's a good one. I really think that this is a good choice. I didn't really mean to like step on Justin's toes at all.
Not at all.
By inserting my story into his story.
Yeah.
But I think it all works together because that's kind of the fun of the world of G.I. Joe is that it's easy to just imagine additional things in it.
The themes so far from Classified haven't really varied from each other a great deal. You know, we had Cobra, the Cobra Island theme literally just dotted itself all the way around the entire map for a while, and then we got the jungle aspect of it with Tiger Force and Python Patrol. So it's not like their story isn't so. It's not like, you know, we have reams and reams of information to deal with. It's just whatever Lenny says on a live stream. So yeah, I agree. I think like keeping the theme tight throughout our entire, you know, the course of both of these episodes has been really fun. Yeah, really like that. Okay, so that's brilliant. Thanks, Justin. Great start. Even though we all knew, expected, and we knew what you were going to say. It was fine. The funny thing, all right, this is not Justin's fault because Justin actually came into this with a different idea. And we were like, what about Hit and Run? And he's like, oh, I didn't want to do that. And we were like, just do Hit and Run because that'd be awesome. And then now I'm ripping it into him as if like that's his problem.
In a way, it's nice to get it out. It's nice to get it done because now I think about other things for our future episodes.
All those Sigma 6 characters you can squeeze in next time.
Why is there not a Sigma 6 Hit and Run, I guess is the question.
There should be.
That actually would have been really cool.
That would have been,
totally.
Yeah, they could have done a great job with that.
Imagine the features. My goodness.
No kidding.
He'd be toxic Hit and Run, though, because of the green arms. Cool. Okay, well, next up then, we have Pat. What's your choice, buddy, for the G.I. Joe Team Deluxe figure, please and thank you?
Well, you know, I do enjoy my space toys. That's why I wore the Starcom shirt today.
Brilliant.
So, I'm going to go with Payload.
Destro has created a privately owned space station known as the Shield of Mars. Advanced recon from the G.I. Joe Star Brigade team has revealed that the massive station is heavily armed and fully equipped with Targats and BAAT troopers, ready to deploy anywhere on the planet or beyond. An analysis by Gears has revealed that the station's vulnerability is a small instrument cluster located on the station's dark side. While a full attack may be disastrous for nearby friendly satellites, it may be possible to reach this small weak point through a dangerous long-range untethered spacewalk. General Hawk has given this difficult assignment to the G.I. Joe team's most seasoned astronaut. Now it is up to Payload to dismantle Destro's space station and to restore peace among the stars.
Okay, so my general idea here was kind of to look at the original Payload figure and try to think of what they were thinking whenever they created it, and then upscale that and try to think what could they put into the figure now. If it was a 6-inch figure, they had a little bit more space and a little bit more toy making technology.
Yeah.
So in some ways, a little bit of what I've included here is making an excuse for making a sweet Payload figure. But that's just kind of how it is. You make the figure and sometimes blend the story around it. And sometimes you start making that story and it dawns on you to include something else that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So my idea is to base it on the original version of Payload, so 1987, and as I said, additional real-world inspiration. Well, one of the things I really like whenever I look at space toys, is that additional visor that spacesuits sometimes have to filter out, I guess it's the sun or solar radiation or whatever it may be. But it's cool. I don't know. A visor to me as a kid was always cool. The fact that somebody would be wearing two of them, that's twice as good.
Twice as cool.
It's like wearing two pairs of shades. Yeah, totally.
And I think that they could actually make a helmet so that the clear bubble would be stationary, just like the original Payload. And then and I love the picture that you found to insert.
I know, it's perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
You found the perfect picture because it's showing the second one that kind of slides down in from the top.
Yeah.
And I do think that as far as toy technology goes, that's something that would be doable because you could make the actual helmet maybe out of something soft and then that other helmet out of something that would be hard. You could probably get like a nice chrome finish on, which, you know, including back metallized parts. Obviously, we've heard Lenny talk about him trying to see if they can get away with that with Cobra Commander. So it's not something that can be done easily. We are talking deluxe figures here. So I thought that I could get away with putting it at least into my dream version of
it's in your budget. It's in your cost. It's in your costing.
Right. I think we know from when I did Hotwire last month that I'm not real good at paying attention to budget, or I will actually pad out my figure a little bit so that one of those imaginary budget cuts happen to my imaginary deluxe figure. I still have something awesome.
The next monthly is going to be me cutting all of your accessories out of all the deluxe figures
and telling us what we ended up with. Oh, that would be sad.
That would be hilarious as well. But yeah, maybe I'll do that.
Or just tasking somebody at Hasbro.
I'll send it in. I'll say,
really happen.
Lenny, cost this out for me, and tell me what we can actually do, and then I'm gonna.
Oh, that would be so depressing.
That would be depressing and actually quite a fun little exercise. I might see what they say, but here we go.
So, well, they would have to watch the episode, which I don't think that I would force them to. Yeah, that wouldn't happen. So, Payload, I would have him come with the Spacewalk MMU, which is the manned maneuvering unit. They don't really use these anymore at all. They don't do spacewalks like this anymore. So it is a little bit dated. And I think that sometimes when you're looking to put something, it's a little weird because the original G.I. Joe toy line, or the Real American Hero, they incorporated things that were outdated. There weren't people using bazookas at the time, but bazookas were things that speak to kids, and so they made a bazooka trooper.
Yep, flamethrowers, bazookas, World War II rifles, etc., etc. Yeah,
and a lot of clothing that was old as well.
Vietnam era.
So,
yep.
Yeah, so you can get away with putting old stuff in the package as long as it's going to be fun for a kid to play with, and in this case, fun for adults to play with. But totally. I do think that there's a little bit of a pushback from the collecting community. They'll go, wow, they don't have those anymore. So I thought that I would include it in the story. So my story includes, Payload has to dig out this old man maneuvering unit and get to this Destro's base in space.
Funny thing is, Pat, I don't think anybody is arguing with you that this MMU wouldn't be the coolest thing ever. Like, everyone's like, yeah, no, it's fine. And you're like, no, everyone's going to think it's outdated. All the collectors hate it. No, mate, trust me. That is awesome. And I think people are going to be digging it.
Okay. Cool. Whenever I looked at the real ones, I saw that there was a camera mounted on the side. And I thought that would be a really cool thing to include. But then I thought, well, it's G.I. Joe. You could actually make that swappable and put a gun there. So nice. Gun or camera.
Nice.
And I think that makes a lot of sense for G.I. Joe because it's space, but it also has the military aspect. So personal defense unit.
I'd have a camera gun. I'd have a camera gun, like
That's true. It could just be both.
2 birds, 1 stone.
You're already costing things out. I was including 2 accessories. You just turned them into 1. That's how this conversation works, I guess.
Well, didn't they do that in the first G.I. Joe comic where they were Baroness was disguised as a reporter on the train for going after Dr. Burkhart, and all their cameras were actually guns? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's true.
And we can we'll reuse that for the next Baroness release. Perfect. Costing.
I'll never look at Scoop the same.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big gun. Wow.
So also with payload, I wanted to include what they call a programmable PGT, which is a pistol grip tool. And the reason why I wanted to include this is everything I was looking at. And I've even seen this like in footage in use. Pretty much this is the go-to tool and accessory used by astronauts whenever they actually are going out to fix something, out in space. So I thought that would be a really good thing to include. Also a tethered tool board, because they carry with them like a bunch of tools that are, on a tether so that they don't just float out into space. And while watching this, I sometimes saw videos of the entire tool board just, falling into the atmosphere, and that's a problem.
I love the idea of those things, but also I think the main reason you wanted to choose them wasn't that. It was because you wanted to give me a nightmare in visual Photoshop work. That's what you wanted to do. But no, carry on.
Sure. And then various attachments like socket tools, a cutter, pliers, hammer, and scoop leverage handles. Those I thought were kind of interesting. They call it a scoop, where it's just a handle that actually attaches onto something on the exterior while you're in space. So that if you were to use the pistol grip tool and start turning it, you're going to be the thing turning as well, because you're in space.
Right.
So you have to have something to have leverage. I think they actually lock their feet in place as well. And then they have that so that they're not twisting around. I just thought that would be a cool call out and something that would be neat to include in some fashion.
Yeah. Also, these little accessories, they're not like obvious either. So it's like little things dropped in there for homage to real world situations, and I really like that.
Yeah, and I think that if somebody in the picture you chose for the pistol grip tool, actually I think that's the same one that I came across while I was looking around on this. That looks like a G.I. Joe accessory to me. That looks like something I would want to have with my original payload. That would be something that'd be awesome.
Agreed.
I could see that being something that came with the figure back in the 80s, and like 40 years later we're all still arguing about what the hell it actually is.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. And just even the E3 that's written on the side of the one that you have pictured there, it just feels like it's, I guess we could call it toyetic. It's something that would be on the toy that would make the kid go, oh, that's something cool. But no, that's really one from the real world.
Yeah, that is real, guys, that I used.
So then I thought a mini computer would also be a really cool thing to include with him, something that he can communicate with, or something that I kind of thought fit the story, because as I was going through the story of him going over and stopping this base that Destro has and destroying it, he's going to need some way of hacking in there. So some kind of mini computer, I think, would make a lot of sense. There's a science, even though it's the real world, there is a flavor of science fiction still to me.
Yeah.
Of being in space. And so I wanted that heightened sci-fi things. They just go together still. Computers and people in space to me.
What is quite funny is talking about this is just reminding me of like the last SpaceX launch I saw, and how the astronauts were wearing like pretty like amazingly futuristic looking clothing, like figure hugging almost like gear.
Yeah.
And like these really cool helmets that I was kind of like, this is like something out of, Star Trek or something. And the actual cockpit they were in was like clean, like pristine white, and everything was just iPads, it looked like. I was like, what is this? This is not, space travel should just be like a million buttons that none of them know what they do. Things all over the place, clattering around, and like big bulky spacesuits so they can't walk in. And now we're in this future where they've almost found Star Trek. It's weird, man. Like, it's weird how much that's progressed. And as much as but it wouldn't work doing Payload Future now, because Payload now wouldn't be half as interesting, in my opinion, as what you're describing for this Payload for Classified, which I think it has to be. It has to be what you're describing, which is almost like a retro futuristic vibe now.
Yeah, that is true. It is going to come across as retro futuristic, but I think that all plays into the thing that I was kind of creating in my mind, that excuse of, well, he has to use this old gear because he's doing something that isn't normally done anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I totally agree though. It is weird how we've moved beyond a lot of this stuff in the real world.
Yeah, but I think for Classified it works 100%. Like, no one's going to be going, this isn't what a space guy wears.
Right. Yeah, that is true. So I thought one of the other things that I should include is a display base with the umbilical.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that the space, the thing that payload comes with actually is made for him to be off in space without the umbilical. But, kids associate being in space with that thing, and it was such a nice way of posing the figure with the original toy that I think that you'd want to include it the same way. That wasn't really real world at the time. It wouldn't be real world now, but it's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you could actually make it so that the backpack came off, because I think with the original one, you most definitely could just take that wire and plug it into the figure's back, because the umbilical works whenever you don't wear the big spacewalk backpack.
So you're suggesting you're suggesting a strong display base with an umbilical cord that holds him up and floats him, kind of thing, right?
You just said it in so many short words, and I said it in so many. Yes. I was, again, trying to justify things that don't need to be justified.
I'm just trying to cost it out, mate. That's all. I'm just trying to work out how I'm going to cut this from the budget.
Costing out the discussion now, too, are you?
I'm gonna. Yeah, that's editing. I'm literally editing as we go. This is really weird.
We can do the umbilical cord, but it'll only be this long, so it's just still standing there. The cord's just kind of dangling down.
It's not long enough to reach the floor.
Yes, to lean back to be connected into the ground.
It's an umbilical tail.
Whoa. No, that's cool, man. Yeah.
But I think that would be a fun way of having him displayed and up above your other figures. And just as long as the base is heavy enough to support him being kind of far out there on the hose.
How would you design the base? What are your thoughts about the actual base part of it? Because that would be kind of fun.
Honestly, in my brain, as soon as I started picturing figure stands, I was just going with clear, but that's not interesting. So I think maybe I don't know, maybe a clear space with stars, or that's something where I would hand it off to somebody else and say, come up with something. And if it's interesting, I'll probably get excited.
What about
it
might be too intricate to do, but like the spaceship it's attached to, like the actual craft, like the route, or a small part of a satellite or something.
I was thinking like the panels from the Defiant or something like that, like the white kind of surface, or the Crusader or whatever, with some of those panel lines in it, or I don't know.
Oh, that'd be so
panel
cool.
lines to make it look like it's just a chunk of a larger item.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a really good idea.
Yeah, that would
make
be
it
sweet.
Look like it's plugged into an actual thing that would be dispersing oxygen into his suit. That'd be cool.
Oh, that's so dope. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I just really would love to have a payload figure with a bunch of cool real world space accessories, but also with the excuse to make it just that old payload that we all kind of love, but also with that sweet visor. Visor, I think, would be a big sell. 100%. Anyway.
That is a great shout. What about packaging, Pat, before we move on to our thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I'm way too tempted to just go with the back doors of the Defiant, the way that they open.
Yes. If
you could make some weird shaped box, it would almost look like Buzz Lightyear in a package, probably.
Yeah.
But I do think that, if this thing just came out in a box that was shaped vaguely like the Defiant, you just opened it up, and then there was the figure inside.
I think that is a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer.
Perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect.
No comments. No, not costing anything out there, mate. That's perfect.
Nope.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, definitely have the doors open out like that, and then he's just there inside the middle of the Defiant, and it's just What more do you need? You don't need any more than that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That would be so good, and the amount of stuff you've given him, it's going to be a big box as well.
That is true. That is true.
But that works with it being a Defiant too. So that's brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Can we have these? I want hit and run.
No
I want
kidding.
hit and run and countdown and payload right now. Funny enough, I for some reason couldn't get countdown out of my head and kept writing countdown on all of the visual stuff, and I had to keep going back and changing it. I'm like, why do I keep saying countdown? But countdown would be a good figure to do. Once you got that payload out there, countdown could come later, not as a deluxe, but as someone that kind of supplemented the space team as well, like, you know, with payload. I think that would be awesome. Like, could you imagine, like, you know, Targats and, you know, countdown and payload and the Star Brigade and stuff. I mean, once we get into that era of Classified, I think I'm going to start crying.
Yeah, I actually did kind of tie my two things together as well last month, because as you recall, some of the things that I put in with Hotwire were some BAAT pieces, so that you may be able to turn a regular bat figure into a space bat figure to go against payload.
Cool.
Nice.
Oh, mate, very, very cool. Justin, what are your thoughts on payload?
I love it. I mean, that is such a classic character, kind of the first Star Brigade sort of character, and I think that version of payload, you know, I love Star Brigade. That series of figures is really a lot of fun, but the payload we got in Star Brigade like absolutely pales in comparison. I mean, it's basically an Eco Warriors barbecue repaint compared to this original payload, and I think we only got two versions of this figure, right? The one that came with
orange
the
and
Defiant,
yellow.
the one that came with the Crusaders. So I mean, it's a very low utilized kind of figure format, and I just so much detail. It's one of those figures that you ask any G.I. Joe fan like what their favorite figures of the 80s is, and payload's going to be way down on their list. But the minute you get it in hand and look at it, you're just like, this is a work of art, you know? I mean, and I think they could really do that justice in the Classified line. Seeing that kind of, you know, drawn up to a 6-inch format would just be amazing. And I would love to see them kind of dip their toes into the Star Brigade waters a little bit and just start getting out there a little bit more, getting a little bit more daring with some of that stuff. And the packaging format it's just perfect. Yeah, it's a great choice.
No, what I really like about this is the fact that having been to a couple of really impressive museums for like the Air Force and stuff like that. The one in Ohio is ridiculously cool. The US Air Force museum is insane. And they have a whole section of like space and all that kind of stuff, like the whole shuttles and all that kind of gear. But they have like spacesuits and things like that on show that you can look at and check out. So all these little details. I've got loads of pictures of all this stuff as well. I was fascinated by getting every single little detail going on, and just what they could put, like you say, pour into this figure, like, you know, making it like taking it up a notch, taking it from like because the figure's awesome. Like that, the original vintage figure is so cool and like a bit futuristic for the time, but still, you know, maintained a lot of the real world kind of stuff. But the fact they could throw so much detail in there, like little badges and little pockets and little pouches and all that, the little gear they have to carry, that you know, like the PGT, like how that could be attached to him as well. Like, we didn't really talk about that. We had like the tethers, but you could definitely have the PGT tool, like almost like holstered, and you could have the tether board could attach to the MMU. Like the MMU could be like this utility kind of thing, where all of those things, like, you know, and then you take it off and the tether's attached to it and it just like floats out there, which is just so many cool things for this particular figure. So yeah, this is a beauty, Pat, and a great shout, mate. Cool. Right then, I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to completely bring it down now with I nearly said it then, with my option for the G.I. Joe team. And this one is one of those characters that I feel has oddly been left out for a long time now. I know we've had a lot of kind of main core characters. This particular character isn't necessarily like core, but he's very popular. He's very well known. He's in the cartoon. He's in the comic. He's in every kind of iteration, basically. And that is Lifeline. A small Joe team has been dropped behind enemy lines, but their mission has taken a difficult turn. With injured soldiers in trouble and in need of urgent medical assistance, General Hawk sends in a follow-up rescue team, including one member every Joe is happy to see: Lifeline. With his state-of-the-art medical equipment and extensive battlefield experience, Lifeline is more than just a medic. He is a rescue trooper who can deal with almost any high-stress and high-stakes situation, but will he be able to rescue his teammates this time? So obviously this, for me, is pretty straightforward to a degree. There's some little aspects I want to kind of incorporate that make it a little bit more complicated. But for Lifeline, based on the V1, obviously, and with obviously a very closely related to his 30th release as well, because that was a great update of the figure. I think we'll all agree that is one of the, again, a really solid figure in that, in the 4-inch era of G.I. Joe. And obviously came out at a time where they were just smashing it out of the park with Pursuit of Cobra, then the 30th, and then like Retaliation as well. There's some beauties in there as well. So they really had it down at this point, and there was a lot of accessories. There was a focus on accessories and loadout, and obviously with this particular Lifeline, that's no exception with this classified idea of mine. So sticking close to the figure design that we know and love, but obviously with that classified aesthetic, you could really go to town on the details again. And we say that a lot, but that is effectively what you're talking about here. I think not necessarily a new torso, but a secondary could be created to create that kind of like open collar, zip down a little bit, pouches, holster kind of like torso that he had. And then with the arms, you probably need new arms as well to kind of like mimic that kind of like I don't know, not loose fitting, but you know what I mean, kind of like fluffy kind of arms. I don't know how to describe it, but you know what I mean. Like a little puffy is the word I'm looking for.
Baggy or whatever.
Baggy would work. Yeah, thank you very much. I've literally had a stroke on camera there. So yeah. And obviously the opportunity then to repaint this figure in the future with Tiger Force is all I care about. So I'm only really doing this because I want the Tiger Force version. I should have just done it as a Tiger Force Lifeline, honestly. But yeah, so, rescue down the leg and all that kind of stuff. So again, there might be opportunity for reuse, but I think he'd have to be a pretty brand new figure head to toe, honestly, just to get the most out of him. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but we'll get to that, I guess, at the end. Like I said, option to repaint as Tiger Force, and then accessories. This is where I feel like Lifeline could really excel as a deluxe figure. Now, in the past, he's been given, in the 30th, he was given a stretcher, which was a great addition to Lifeline. Obviously, a stretcher came with Dockin back in the day, but Lifeline, the original figure, he didn't have a stretcher. But this kind of idea that obviously, he could have a stretcher with classified, I kind of wanted to up it a little bit. And I figured a stretcher trolley with fold-out wheels would be kind of cool. And obviously the fact that they fold means that you'd have that option to, limit storage in box and display space too. Like if you didn't want it open fully, you could close it up and you've got like a flat stretcher kind of thing. Or leave it in the box, whatever you want to do. But I figured as a Dio piece that it works really well, because then you could, if you got a couple of them, if you're lucky enough to get a couple of deluxe Lifelines, you could then start building a little hospital. Do you know what I mean? Like almost, or like, you could have it so that a couple of injuries are being dealt with, on the battlefield or whatever. And I know it's more for ambulances, isn't it? Those ones that kind of fold out, slam them into the ambulance and it kind of folds down again and so on and so forth. I kind of get that. But I think it could be like, they could do like some sort of basic structure with the wheels as well, so that it wasn't like super complicated. Just like a cross thing like that, and then the stretcher sits on the top. It doesn't have to be like the one I've shown on here, which is like the mattress piece, this really complex bed, the really complex folding section. Like it can be a little bit more, relaxed. Obviously, it would be cool if they could go to town on it and have like a separate padded section that comes off. The straps, could come off as well. and then you have this kind of like scaffold of a fold up trolley, which would be kind of fun. So like if they could do that, great, but that doesn't have to be the key. It doesn't have to be all bells and whistles on this one. And I'm already costing myself out, guys. I understand.
McFarlane had done a like a 5-inch stretcher that folded up too for like the old X-Files
line. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, this really isn't outlandish at all. I keep thinking though, as you're talking, like you mentioned Tiger Force Lifeline. What would the Tiger Force stretcher look like?
Oh, mate, it would have a tiger on it for a start. You'd have to do it with the paint scheme of the vehicles, wouldn't you? You'd have to do it with the face on it.
That's hilarious. All I'm picturing is Lifeline like out on the battlefield, like wrestling with a stretcher with wheels, kind of over the rocks and the roots and the trees and stuff, trying to get him to the tomahawk while he's
put treads on the bottom. Treads on the bottom.
Tank treads.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I'm well into this so much now. That's just made me think that Lifeline needs like an ambulance, and I know you could probably say that the APC is kind of seen as that, with especially the ATC, because that has beds in it, doesn't it? Does the APC?
Right.
So yeah.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
The APC does not. The ATC.
Yeah.
The back end's a lot more interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kitty said.
Not the first time I've heard that.
It might be on this show, but not in the reality. Yeah. So okay, coming back to this. Yeah. So I kind of think, imagine a Tiger Force ambulance. Oh, that'd be so dope. Anyway, that's a whole nother monthly episode I think we need to talk about there. Anyway, continuing with Lifeline and what the figure comes with. So obviously the trolley for me is like a bit of a selling point. It's like your display stand, Pat. I know it's not as sexy, but I think as a dio piece it could look really cool. And it would, there'd be crossover for other lines. I don't know what, but I'm sure there would be. I'm sure Lion-O needs to get fixed every now and again.
With a Tiger Force stretcher.
Yeah, he'd get a Tiger Force one, definitely. So coming back to Lifeline, the figure, I think removable helmet, goggles, and removable shades would be really cool, because we have seen, obviously, the removable helmet in the 30th, and obviously the fact that we've now have precedent for 2 figures that have had removable shades, 2 characters, I would say, I think, Baroness and Roadblock, that is, the possibility is there again for Lifeline. So I'm thinking removable shades, removable helmet, and goggles, and put it all on, and you've got Lifeline.
Yeah, would you make it so the goggles can actually go down over his shades or over his face, so that
I would do it maybe like the way they did. Is it Dusty, where he's got 2 sets of goggles, one for the helmet and one for the actual figure?
Oh, right, because they found out that the other ones were stretching a lot when you put them on the helmet.
Yeah, and I think given the size of his helmet.
Yeah.
Given the size of his helmet, it might be that, because you take that off, obviously it's going to be a lot bigger. It'll just be around his neck. So I kind of think, if we could do it so that maybe the goggles on the helmet could come over the top, right? And there were other goggles separate that we could probably cost that out, actually, because I think that might be overdoing it. So if you took the shades off, he could put the goggles down, right? Or... Yeah. Because that would make sense, because it's already on the helmet, it's already the right size, just coming over the top of the helmet would work. Because the actual helmet, from what I remember, doesn't have a lip on it necessarily. It's just like a cap. It's like a skull cap. Right. So, I think you could definitely...
You're basically just making it slide down, which really wouldn't be too much of a stretch.
So, if you take the shades off to allow the goggles to come down, I think that's all that's necessary. So you only need those 3 items, I think. But, I think that would work.
The 30th one was going to come with another helmet, too.
Was it?
Yeah, like a combat helmet, sort of a green, sort of rounded ballistic helmet.
Yeah, something a little more modern. It ended up coming out in Retaliation with Mouse.
Oh, I don't think I ever knew that. Oh, that's interesting to. I thought I knew everything, but obviously not. That's really cool. So maybe okay. Well, in that case, I know we're costing up now, but maybe throw in that helmet. Maybe throw in that helmet.
So you cost ours down and you cost yours up. I see how this is.
Exactly. No kidding.
When you have your own podcast, Pat, you can do. When I'm on articulated points, you can cost me down as much as you like. No, joking aside, I'm saying if you guys want to add that, you can. But I'm happy with what I've come up with. That's how I get around that. Alternate heads is another one because, obviously Lifeline depicted very often in that kind of calm demeanor. But his card art was always really cool for me. And I know he's not screaming, he's not yelling, he's not like shouting or anything. But there's definitely more at stake going on in that artwork, and the mouth is open. He's like, you don't know what he's doing under the shades necessarily, but that could be like shock or surprise or all that kind of stuff. So I think like a more intense head sculpt would be kind of cool, and then the other one could be the calm, chill, normal Lifeline that we're all kind of all know well and good. So that's that kind of area of Lifeline. Then comes all of the friggin' rest of the accessories, because there's going to be a lot of them. Obviously the backpack, the kind of almost like the radio antenna style thing. I know, like, I think it's insinuated that the mic on, he's got a mic on his helmet and the backpack is maybe a radio kind of antenna, so for communication. So that's kind of cool, but you could go to town with that a little bit, obviously. Again, details and other aspects of the actual backpack could be kind of cool. So yeah, there wouldn't be like, I was kind of thinking maybe you could have like a little headset as well that would be separate from the helmet but would go over the top of it. So like the not the 25th, the ones that came with the Eagle Hawk for the 4-inch, where you've got that thing that just goes over the top of a helmet, like spreads out, and it's cool, like I'm wearing right now, or like what you're wearing, Justin, in actual fact.
Yeah.
That kind of vibe I think would be kind of cool, that then like plugged into the backpack, and then when you weren't using it, you take it off and you put it into the backpack or on the backpack in some way. So that was like in my head for the radio backpack, but there would have to be a lot of design, and I'd have to see it and see what made sense. But I think that could be kind of cool. Obviously his case, the white case with rescue on it, open, like, have it like open and contain all of this cool stuff, the defibrillator and pads, oxygen mask and tank, syringes, and then tons of medical supplies. And then obviously, like you've got things like, the pistol or the syringe kind of gun, we'll call it, that could obviously plug into the little pocket on the little holster on his secondary. But then I think he needs a pistol. I think he needs a rifle. I think he needs all those things that make him a rescue trooper from the 30th. It doesn't, not necessary 100%, but I would like him to have all of the stuff at his disposal, whether he's a pacifist and decides to use it or not. Like, he can come with more weapons because it's not necessarily going to be used for him, if that makes sense. You could, those
holster could maybe fit his hypodermic gun, or could fit the actual regular pistol. So you could outfit him with just his non-weaponized gear, or if you wanted him to use the weapons, you could, or just give him to somebody else. Yeah, absolutely.
And that hypodermic, I'm glad you gave it a proper name. Could they reutilize the Dr. Mindbender one for that, do you think? Or do you think
yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it looks close enough.
Yeah, I think they could probably get away with that. So yeah, that's an option too. And yeah, in terms of medical supplies, like that bag would just be awesome. And I think you could have like little rolled up bandages, and like little things like that just thrown in to kind of fill the case up, but then also for display use, for actual use on the injuries and stuff like that. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Little bottles of Oxy,
Yeah. Or you could have this was another thing that I was thinking of the other day that I didn't put in the graphics, but you could have, and I'm not sure how like much you could do this, maybe with Deluxe it's okay, but like blood-stained open bandages that you could put on figures, which like not like actual material, but right, like like a little patch you could put on, like a little square with blood on it,
or a head wrap or something like that to go over their forehead.
Yes. So you could kind of then be like dealing with injured Joes and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. And as far as packaging goes, I would make it probably very very much like his case, in that it opened and all of the things were in there, including him, as like as a display. So his case is effectively his box, because it's kind of synonymous with him. The other alternative one I was thinking was to have it like the Tomahawk and have like almost like sliding doors on the side. And he's there like with his gear about to jump out of it. I mean, that either way, I think it would be kind of cute to do something along those lines. But what do you guys think of Lifeline? We'll start with you, Justin.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, he's a pretty core character from the 86 era of G.I. Joe. He was featured pretty frequently in the season 2 cartoons. A really kind of distinct character. I think his pacifism is something that a lot of people identify him with from that era of the animation. I love the idea of the various different head sculpts. One thing that I kind of wish Hasbro did a little bit more with Classified was not just heads, but like different hands, so you could pose them and display them in different sort of formats. I really like that. So that would be a really cool aspect. I like the idea of him coming with, the more, the combat oriented gear, even if he doesn't use it.
Yeah.
The 30th anniversary Lifeline is probably one of my favorite figures of the modern era. It's just
beautiful.
It was a fantastic figure that really ticked all the right boxes. And I think they could easily ramp that up to 6-inch scale, give collectors a character that they remember from their youth, but also has a lot of kind of modern traits to it, and that can appeal to other folks as well. So I think there's a lot to love about doing Lifeline in this format, and with all the accessories especially and all that stuff too.
I mean, you'd have to cut it down significantly for the Tiger Force version, but you could easily just have, a case with a backpack maybe, and a couple of the items. But yeah, that would be something you'd really have to think about in the design of the original one first, and how much goes in it. Because if you've got space in there, then it's kind of a bit irrelevant, isn't it? But yeah.
And you mentioned how he would have to be mostly new tooling, and whether or not, like, kind of what our thoughts are on that. And I've actually been pretty pleasantly surprised at how much new tooling Hasbro has done throughout the G.I. Joe Classified era. Those first couple of series came out and you're like, well, Red Ninja is mostly just Snake Eyes with a new head and a new vest. Are they really going to just reuse tooling over and over again, whether or not it makes sense? But then, that hasn't really been the case. They've shared tooling where it does make sense,
like legs.
and where you can get away with that sort of thing. But for the really identifying characteristics of a character, they have leaned into new tooling for that. Somebody like the Crimson Guard, who I think a lot of people thought maybe back in the day would be a repurposed Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander had that kind of regal look, and that they might repaint him to Crimson Guard. Instead, they just went all out and did all new tunic and arms and everything. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for Hasbro to do all new tooling for Lifeline. I think that's something they could and probably will get away with, and then they can repurpose it, like you said, for Tiger Force down the line somewhere. But that's something they've been really, really good at, is that, often in the 25th anniversary, especially, the reused tooling was pretty obvious. Like, you was, just slap a new vest on him, and call him a different character. But they're really doing that more thoughtfully with the Classified line, and it shows. It's been great to see exactly how much new tooling these figures all have.
Absolutely. And Pat, Lifeline, are you a fan, or do you hate me and never want to speak to me ever again?
No, I think this is a great idea. I think one of the things I liked about the 30th Lifeline, for whatever reason, was whenever I opened up that kit and there was an actual IV bag.
Oh yeah,
that's one thing I didn't even think of. But a little IV, like a little stand,
to go on the stretcher. You could have a little pole. I mean, how easy would that be?
Totally.
Just as one additional thing on there.
Yeah, and
then the IV bag could actually plug onto that, and the figure had hoses to go to another figure, so you could just do the same thing again in that kit, so that you could just take care of somebody. I think this is the kind of thing that would attract a lot of people to G.I. Joe, because you have a specialty that fits so well in the real world with medical professionals. Like, if you're a medical professional and you are open to action figure buying at all, and you were to see this, yeah, it's awesome. It'd be something you'd almost have to buy to remind you of what you do.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I guess if I'm costing things up, I'd also toss in a small little box of Rice Krispies.
Oh,
that would be perfect.
Amazing.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so effectively, mine is now a super deluxe figure with 500 items that we didn't plan for initially. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of our choices. and also what you want to see as a G.I. Joe team member in the Deluxe Classified range. Right, next up then, we are going to get stuck into version therapy. Hey there guys, just wanted to let you know about an app that I've been helping to develop for a few years now called Hoardar. But what is Hoardar, I hear you scream? Well, a number of years ago I discussed a project with a good friend of mine and now co-owner/developer about an app that could help collectors of all shapes and sizes. I'm talking about the shapes and sizes of the collections really, but also people. The app would be a place where you could share your new items, build collections and sub-collections, or just browse the feed to see cool things. Well, we made it. We tested it for a number of years, and now it's out there for you to enjoy on iOS or Android devices. You can upload a single item at a time at your own pace and slowly build your collections. You can post status updates that could be related to your collections, like getting a delivery or posting a scene in which you can tag items in that image if you've uploaded them in the past. You can add tags to your items in order to easily search for and find them, and of course to add them into your respective collections. You can like posts, comment on them, or start a conversation with a fellow collector, directly message users you follow, and even add items you see on your feed to your want list. If you prefer to use your computer or laptop, have no fear, you can use the website browser version and even utilise the awesome inventory option, allowing any user to change certain details, add notes, upload bulk items from spreadsheet files, and download a CSV of your entire itemised collection. We made this app for collectors, and we hope that you enjoy using it as much as we enjoyed creating it. Now get to hoarding. Right then, continuing with our regular monthly segment now, Version Therapy, which is where we choose a single G.I. Joe or Cobra character and have a discussion on what action figure version is their best. Now, of course, we are all probably going to have different opinions on this based on when we were born, personal experience and so on, but that's where the fun lies. Feel free to let us know who your favourite action figure version is and why in the comments below as well. So who have we got next? Well, last month we looked at Zartan based on his Classified Deluxe inclusion. Next up, and due to the fact that there is only one Deluxe Joe so far in the line and we've already done Snake Eyes, we thought we would hit a character who has had many versions, and that is, well, I can actually still have more, Roadblock. Right then guys, let's get stuck into Roadblock as our next version therapy. Justin, why don't you take us through some of your kind of like thought processes in breaking down like some of your favorites, but what is, and then lead into your fave if you could please, bud.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Roadblock is always interesting. I mean, first of all, you know, I noticed that you went out of your way to make sure that I couldn't choose a Sigma 6 figure, so I appreciate that.
Funny enough, my response in the message was, and you can't have Sigma 6 heavy duty.
Well, it's funny. I mean, fans who are kind of newer to the brand may not realize there's a period of time where, you know, Hasbro essentially lost the trademark to Roadblock, or at least that's the working theory, because there's a several-year gap where there just was no Roadblock figures. It was, you know, they kind of shifted to Heavy Duty, who was a character in the vintage line anyway, but he sort of...
Blast was one as well.
There was Double Blast too. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Double Blast, and I think that Heavy Duty for 2002 was designed with the intent of Roadblock, and then they made it Heavy Duty. So yeah.
Exactly. And they kind of dovetailed them together, like Heavy Duty suddenly became a chef, and it was kind of funny the way that they kind of merged the two characters. But then, you know, obviously as time went on, you know, they got rights to do Roadblock again or did some creative legal stuff, whatever. And then he kind of became the star of the show, you know, the G.I. Joe Retaliation film. And that's sort of where I'm beginning, because obviously, you know, Roadblock has been around since 1984. He's a pretty, you know, he's a rock solid character. You know, he's appeared in the cartoon, he's appeared in the comic, he's appeared in pretty much every iteration of G.I. Joe there is, except Sigma 6. He was one of the first 5 classified figures they did. So I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of spotlight on him. Folks probably know that I like it when my action figures kind of bear resemblance to media at the time. I think it's a really cool synergy when they can take what's on my screen or in my comic pages and translate it to plastic form. So one of my runner-ups, not my final choice, one of my runner-ups was the Ultimate Roadblock from the G.I. Joe Retaliation line. I know a lot of folks, you know, with his likeness to Dwayne Johnson might say, well, it's kind of Roadblock, but not really. But the way they sort of incorporated those movie accessories with a 4-inch figure was just absolutely mind-blowing at the time. You had what was called Battle Kata, which is like these little knuckles that could connect to his fists and create different customizable weapons. They did them all in this 4-inch scale. I gave him his nightstick and a little knife, and they all hooked onto his vest. And it was pretty crazy, all the different design elements they could do. And he looked just like the character from the film. So that is sort of that's on my short list of favorite Roadblock figures, even though it's from a film that a lot of people think is kind of forgettable. Probably my next runner-up again is a media tie-in, and I almost choose it more for its significance than for its aesthetic appeal, although I do like its aesthetics as well. When G.I. Joe Renegades was on the hub, Hasbro obviously did a toy line to correspond to that. But for whatever reason, they just kind of never got around to Roadblock during the short amount of time that they were releasing toys for it, because I don't know, it was a short-lived series and a short-lived toy line. They just never found a way to include him. So for a while, he was the sole missing cast member for the G.I. Joe Renegades roster, up until they released kind of a very cool sort of Revolution boxed set that included, of all things, Leoric from the Visionaries, which was so bizarre but cool. So Rom, Mask. They kind of took the IDW kind of combined universe that they were building and did this box set with all these various different storylines interwoven, and they included the Renegades version of Roadblock in there that had a new head and new vest, which had been previously designed, I believe, for the original Renegades line, but just never produced. They actually got it into the production line, and because it sort of filled that gap in that roster for a cartoon that I really loved, it has some solid significance. So it's kind of my second runner-up, just again because of the cool factor and the fact that it's it resembles the cartoon and it fills that empty spot in that Renegades roster.
I want the Coyote.
Oh yeah, man! They showed that prototype at one of those G.I. Joe conventions. That thing looked insane. Oh, I want that. Renegades is I could do a whole show based on how much of a lost opportunity Renegades was to really kind of get G.I. Joe back on track.
That's the next monthly sorted. Thank you.
But what I'm actually choosing for my favorite version of Roadblock is one that's a little bit off the radar, and I'll admit I kind of went with this version mostly because it is kind of off the radar. It's easy to say, well, Roadblock version 1 is the preeminent version of Roadblock. That's the way everybody knows him. And it's true. But the 84 figure, that was kind of just before they really started doing these bulkier action figure bucks. He's kind of skinny, he doesn't look as imposing as he's kind of depicted in the cartoons and the comics. So I kind of strayed away from that version. The 85 version's got his appeal, or 86 has his appeal as well. Can't remember if it's 85 or 86. But ultimately, where I really think Roadblock hit his stride was originally sort of in the 90s, and then that catapulted into a very overlooked set called the Heavy Assault Squad, which was a Toys R Us exclusive O-ring set during the Valor versus Venom line. And they took a Roadblock figure that had been originally done in the 90s and kind of put him in this really neat kind of green and black color scheme. I love the head sculpt of this figure. It came out originally, I think, in 91, 92. I think 92. The sort of quilted sweater. He's obviously much larger bulk than he was, or much larger buck than he was in 1984. He just really looks imposing, really looks cool, and this color scheme I just found really appealing. Yeah. And while I admit part of the reason I chose this figure is because it is a little bit off the radar, I think it really does represent a very cool era in Roadblock's sort of mythology. And if I was told that I could only pick one Roadblock to represent Roadblock, this is probably one of the ones that I would pick, just because of the cool factor, and it's a little bit unusual, but a very awesome version of Roadblock.
I have to agree with that one. I think it's a pretty solid choice. I think Pat will agree with you as well. But we'll get to that shortly, Pat. I would say that it was like the V1, like you say, is a little bit skinny. Like he's a little bit kind of like, it doesn't feel like Roadblock in stature. Yeah. And then V2, they kind of built on that a little bit and gave him a little bit more heft. But this version, which Pat might talk in more depth a little bit later on, spoiler alert, is the first time I think they got it like spot on with the size, the head sculpt, everything just seems to be like that's the one. That's right now. Do you know what I mean? That they've got it right now. But yeah, funny enough, when I go through mine as well, that I'll go completely against what we've just been said then. But I do feel that is the first time that we saw Roadblock properly. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Pat.
Well, and I will actually, before Pat goes on, I do want to mention sort of another sort of honorary mention that I didn't give Chris a list to and kind of stumbled upon afterwards, but didn't want him to kind of totally rewrite his little presentation here. But the G.I. Joe Resolute version of Roadblock is sort of another one that I think is a little bit overlooked and unheralded. It was a very cool version of that character that really I probably should have put on my list somewhere, because he's a pretty great representation of Roadblock and just one of the versions of that character that I think really did the job well. So I just wanted to mention him before anybody accused us of overlooking a great version.
No, that's great, man. And the slideshow is just for us. It's not like that's really just so that we can keep structure. But you throw more things at me to do.
Well, I just didn't want you to whine about doing Photoshop again. That's all.
So you left it to the moment I could do nothing about it.
Exactly. Yep. There you go.
I like your style. Pat, all right, take us through your thought process, Pat, on this. But then obviously, I know you've got other versions you want to talk about as well.
Well, it's interesting how much my thoughts line up right with Justin. I actually was going to mention the Resolute one just as an honorable mention myself, because we hadn't brought it up yet. And whenever I was picking mine, I really had trouble not saying that Retaliation Ultimate Roadblock, because it's such a solid action figure. If you would have handed that to me as a kid, it would have been my favorite figure forever. So yeah, we've got several really great versions. The one that I chose, I admit maybe I was quick to choose it because I wanted to make sure nobody else chose it. And that was the Recalled Roadblock from 1992 is what I have chosen as my choice for the best Roadblock ever. And in a lot of ways, everything that Justin just said is why I was picking this one. I mean, I guess I was picking this one also because I didn't want everybody to just assume that I would go right to Roadblock version 1, which is the one that I had as a kid. But as Justin said, that figure looks a little thin to represent the character at this point. The Roadblock that they came out with in 1992, I think encapsulates Roadblock much better than the first two versions do. And that's really saying something, because it's not the one that appears in tons of media.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times really what makes or breaks Roadblock for me is the accessories. And the accessories for this one are a little rough.
3 different times as well. Can we just discuss the little history of it as well, Pat, for those that don't know?
Back in like 91, 92, they decided to start including weapons really do shoot instead of weapons do not shoot on the package. A change in Hasbro had happened, and the higher-ups decided, making the accessories shoot and fire was fine. No longer did you have to do the finger flick thing that they had gone with whenever they could get away with it before. But instead, now there's going to actually be spring-activated stuff. And whenever they came out with Roadblock, apparently there were some safety issues with it. I still don't quite know what those safety issues were. I know that I've seen a Roadblock where at Hasbro what they did was they cut the wheel off the outside and just made it into kind of a sharp blade. And I have to think that the reason why they were doing that was for some sort of safety test. So
yeah.
It's possible that kids were modifying these and that's where the lack of safety comes from. Because
was it breaking as well? I want to say that thing was busting up, wasn't it, inside?
That was always the rumor, but I launched one maybe 10 years ago. It's been a while.
It's still up there. It's still out there. It's still flying around, isn't it? It's that good.
But like prior to a Joe Con, I was at my friend's house, and he had a couple of recalled Roadblocks, and it came up the fact that we'd never gone outside and actually launched one.
Amazing.
And so we put that thing on. He cranked it more than I was comfortable with, and it didn't break. So I don't know, maybe a kid with it tons and tons of times, maybe it would break. I can't say that it wouldn't, but given time and the additional fragility of plastic, it didn't.
Okay.
So
it's more likely safety.
Yeah. Oh man, that thing flies. it did a really good job of doing exactly what it was designed to do, because it went a lot higher than some other similar toys usually do. Like that thing took off, and if you launch one inside, it's definitely going to grind against the ceiling for a little while. Like those things take off. So yeah, recalled Roadblock. One of the things I always did kind of feel like he should have had is I kind of felt like if they would have just put like a peg hole on the base of the thing that launches, then he would at least have something to rest his weapon on. Like some sort of, if he doesn't have a bipod, maybe instead he has this big launcher thing that it would go on.
Yeah.
Instead, he's just always left carrying that thing around. And I do think that that's where this figure lacks, is that I would like some sort of tripod like the second Roadblock had. The big scope is also a little silly, but I guess you can have a large scope like that on a high-powered weapon if you're just going to have one huge shot. Maybe it's for taking out tanks or something like that.
Yeah, that's for taking out buildings. I think that one is absolutely freaking massive.
Yeah. So maybe you line it up and then you fire while you're not, having your eye right next to it.
That's why his head sculpt changed, because he used that. I would also probably good to explain as well that the figure was also brought out after the fact again on the Battle Core card, and then again changed deco completely again with different accessories again. So yeah, whenever they took away his the spinning disc and the firing mechanism, they also took away the accessories that were unique to him. And in doing that, they didn't give him any large weapon at all. It would have been nice if you would have had even the sprue with like Tunnel Rat's weapon on it. Yeah.
Like, the sprue that was included with him doesn't speak to Roadblock at all to me. And then whenever they recolored the figure, they gave him that same sprue again. So I don't know. I really didn't think that made for a great Roadblock. Other than that, the other honorable mention that I would have would be the Anti-Venom set Roadblock, which really is the same as the one that Justin just chose, only with different colored pants. But he has accessories that I really love. And I like the Steel Brigade helmet that he came with. And then he actually came with, didn't he come with the version 1 Roadblock accessories?
Yeah.
I think he might have, yeah.
Yeah, the kind of Marduce with the tripod and the backpack. Yeah.
So I don't know. So I was being a little greedy in my choice, trying to pick the one that I wanted before there was a chance of anybody else picking it. And as it turns out, I think maybe Justin was looking at that one as well.
I won't lie. Yeah, that was on my short list, but that's fine.
You even mentioned,
I like my choice too.
Pat, you even mentioned the retro Walmart 4-inch figure as well.
That is true. I did want to throw in an honorable mention to that one because it's a good figure. The additional vest is not a detractor at all. It's an additional something that you get in the package. And then if you take that off, he has this very classic look. I would say that I would like to have, more articulation, the double knees and some ankle articulation, and he doesn't have that. But overall, that was one that I think that we were waiting on for a long time to be redone after the 25th one had come out.
Yeah.
And so it was a long time coming. I'm glad that this one made it out, but I could still go for a whole new 4-inch line, but that's a whole other topic.
He almost had like a mini Classified head sculpt as well, didn't he?
Yeah. I think that's what it was. I think they just scaled down the 3D sculpt, which I don't know. I think maybe I liked the one that the club had used a little bit more than the one that ended up on this figure, but it's not bad. You hold this figure next to the 25th anniversary Roadblock, there's no question which one's a better figure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Old blooming circular blooming... Oh, God. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Look, so there are some great figures that Roadblock has had. There's also some absolutely terrible ones as well. But yeah, I'll start with my kind of like... I don't know, the figures that I have like little anecdotes for, I guess, because one of the things that drives my favorites of anything is always that kind of nostalgic connection. And my Roadblock is actually technically version 2. So when I think of Roadblock, when I see Roadblock, it's that kind of V2 later Sunbow, like not basically the Sunbow one, but this one I'm looking at specifically with the green kind of like vest, the white t-shirt underneath, the grey pants, and the what I thought was just an even cooler machine gun. I thought it was bonkers. There was a huge tripod, so it kind of was like, I wouldn't say it was like practical though, because most of the time he'd just be he'd be standing up firing it. He wouldn't be kneeling down firing anything because he's Roadblock. The dude's a monster. So like that one initially was my super favorite figure, and I remember getting this one, and my friend David Buckle, I'm calling you out right now, David, you piece of I'm just kidding, I don't have any hate, it wasn't your fault what happened. Anyway, I brought some figures to school, and we're in I don't know, junior school at this point, and I gave him my Roadblock figure while we were playing and everything, and then we had to go to class, so he put it in his pocket and I put mine away, whatever. And when it came to giving me the figure back at the end of the school day after that class we had, he takes it out of his pocket and the O-ring had snapped inside. And obviously I didn't know how to construct a figure, so he hands me back this Roadblock and he's like, oh no, and the legs fell off and the hip and everything just fell apart. And I was devastated, and he was upset because he didn't mean to do it. He just put it in his pocket, and inside his pocket it just must have snapped. And I take it back, and I took it back home, and for ages I just had this figure with no just bits of this figure laying around, and it was the saddest thing ever. And because this is the saddest part, because I didn't know any better, because I thought it was broken, it was thrown away. And I know. And then after the fact, when I found out that I could just replace the O-ring, I could have just replaced the O-ring and had my Roadblock back. But no. So that has haunted me forever. So one of the reasons I loved that figure is because of the horrible things that were done to it in my childhood. So that was the first one. Now, I know we talked about the version 1 not really being bulky, but I also remember the first time I saw Tiger Force Roadblock, and I was so excited to be able to get this version of the figure because I didn't get the first version when it was available. I didn't know it was, I couldn't get it for whatever reason. So to be able to get the opportunity to get the Tiger Force one, and for it to be so cool, and to be Tiger Force, and to effectively be the same figure was, ticked so many boxes. So for those two were those are my two Roadblocks when I was a kid. Those are what I had growing up. Now, in terms of my favorite ever Roadblock figures, I have to then kind of flow into the modern era a little bit, and the one that was the top of the tree for me for so long, for a number of years, was the Tiger Force mystery figure from the club, because my god, that figure is awesome. And it is just so simple. It's just the repaint. There you go. But the body they use, the head sculpt's fantastic. Just the figure is just phenomenal, in my opinion. One of my favourite ever Roadblocks of all time. And I was just one of those ones that we were waiting for it for ages. And I've got a feeling we're going to be in a similar boat, waiting for the Classified Tiger Force figure for ages. But I know that when that comes out, which it should, it will probably have something to do with the figure that is currently my favourite figure Roadblock figure of all time, and that is Heavy Artillery Classified Roadblock. And like I said, I think when the Tiger Force version of this comes out, that will then leap to the top of the tree, because this figure is just phenomenal. Beautiful reuse of certain parts, excellent deco, and an amazing machine gun. I mean, that thing is just ridiculous. Like the minigun, the removable helmet, just everything about that Roadblock is it just screamed perfection for me when they released that. And I was like, okay, that's my Roadblock. I'm happy with that. But if you do a Tiger Force one, I'll be happily waiting to put that at the top of the tree. So that's how my kind of story goes with that. I mean, what do you guys think?
I mean, I've made it pretty clear that I don't really like when Hasbro leans too hard to the vintage stuff in the classified line, but the Heavy Assault or Heavy Artillery Roadblock is just amazing. It's a fantastic figure. Just it seems like there was a point where Hasbro shifted, their focus a little bit and started incorporating more vintage designs, but also kind of ramped up. I don't know how to explain it, but the figures that came before Heavy Artillery Roadblock seem to be distinctly different than the figures that appeared after Heavy Artillery Roadblock. Yeah. I don't know if it's the line is as clear as I'm making it sound, but like those first 20 figures were great. I loved them. It's what kind of got me started on the line. But then from the moment Heavy Artillery Roadblock came out to pretty much everything kind of after that, they just keep on kind of cranking it, the spirits and the Storm Shadows and the Cobra Officers and the Major Bloods, and just kind of getting, more and more and more detail and sculpt and accessories. And yeah, this figure is really, it is far and away, it's way better than the Wave 1 Roadblock. I like the Cobra Island Roadblock for its own reasons, but this is, this is the top of the heap. And it's similar to kind of the retro gung-ho in that way, in that even though I prefer not to be so adherent to vintage designs, just the execution is so great that you find it tough to complain about it. Yeah. So I think this figure is just spectacular, and I agree. I'd love to see it in Tiger Force as well. I think that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's got to happen eventually. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, it's a good choice. Yeah, very good choice.
Yeah, I agree. I really like this one a lot. One of the things I actually was not crazy about in the first wave of the Classified series was Roadblock, because, I didn't mind the idea of him coming with an energy weapon, but the thing I did mind is that energy weapon didn't look like it was heavy enough to me. Yeah. Like, I need Roadblock to look like he does here, where it looks like it's amazing to me that he can even lift his weapon, let alone that this guy's going to stand there firing this thing as well. Like, that's just insane. He's, a hugely muscular guy. And I wanted that conveyed in the thing that he was carrying. And I really didn't think that first wave one did that very well at all. But this one, it's like we've said before. Now that we have this one, I think that opens the door to making a very distinct and different Roadblock. The only problem is we're kind of oversaturated on Roadblocks right now. I think that, it's kind of the good thing that we got this one now, because I do think that it opens up something for later. I don't know what else I would want them to do with Roadblock, but the introduction picture that you had, seeing him there in some of that art, and there's that space suit.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely would love a Roadblock to go along with Payload. The Star Brigade outfit. Like that.
There you go.
Like, it's just such an excuse to have a bright orange figure. He looked great in that second. But the first one had the red, white, and blue. It had like America all over the spacesuit, pretty much. Yeah. And that second one, I do prefer the one in orange.
He went Netherlands for the second one, didn't he? He went from the USA to Holland in one fell swoop, just like that.
Sure, but I like it. It looks awesome. I love that Roadblock. I don't know. I do like your choice, and it's going to be a tough one to top. But I don't think that the Roadblocks that come after this should be trying to top it as much as they should be trying to do something.
I agree with 100%. Apart from the fact that we need that Tiger Force one pretty soon, please, and thank you. I just want to see him with. I want that helmet just in yellow with tiger stripes on it. It's just stupidly bonkers, but it needs to happen. Anyway, guys, we've come to the end of our Mammoth Deluxe Part 2 of G.I. Joe. Hope you guys at home have enjoyed that. Let us know, obviously, in the comments your favourite version of Roadblock. And, of course, let us know as well, like I said before, let us know your choices for Classified Deluxe figures in both Cobra and G.I. Joe. Let us know in the comments what you want to see. And let us know how bad our choices were as well. We always love to hear about that. But yeah, who is your favourite Roadblock? Because there are so bloody many of them. That was one of the difficult thing we have with version therapy, is getting that balance of what's kind of the current character that we're talking about. Is there like a release coming out? Is there something that's happened, like in the current arena of the world, that would make a good idea to do this particular character. So it was difficult to do this one because we'd already gone through PulseCon, we'd done Deluxe twice, and they haven't really done many G.I. Joe Deluxe figures so far, which is weird, isn't it? Like when I look back at it, what we're actually looking at, it's only Snake Eyes that's come out for the Joes. I know like Kamakura is technically Deluxe, and there's a couple others that are a little bit more than just your regular, like Sergeant Slaughter and those kind of figures. But in terms of like your full-on Deluxe figure, it's been all Cobra so far.
It certainly looks like, I don't remember if Torpedo is Deluxe or not, but it looks like that could potentially be a Deluxe figure with all the different scuba gear he comes with and stuff. But yeah, so far it's been mostly Cobra, which is interesting.
Yeah, they just like being bad, don't they? Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining us and talking through our everythings. Guys, thanks for jumping on as well and joining me for this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely, pleasure's ours.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Like we are literally like an hour and a half. That's what we do. That's our new thing. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us for the Full Force Monthly. Massive thank you to my awesome co-host Patrick Stewart and Justin Bell. See you next month. And as always, after 3, 1, 2, 3, Full Force! He put his hand down again. He did it again. I can't believe it. Pat, as always, he does it. He's frozen, look.
I think Pat's frozen, yeah.
No, I'm good.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force!